Rain hammered against the window panes with a fury, as if the very sky was weeping over the misery of that house. Alice Smith lay curled on the bedroom floor, clutching her abdomen, that round, warm belly where, for 6 months, the only creature left on earth who might still love her was growing. Her nightgown, once white, now stained with blood, clung to her trembling body. A searing pain ripped through her as if 1,000 shards of glass were dancing in her womb. But that pain was not the worst of it. The worst was what she saw before her. Damien stood over her, his shadow on the wall, a monster from a child's nightmare. But this was no dream. This was her husband, the father of her unborn child. The man who 4 years ago had knelt before her with a ring, reciting poetry of eternal love. Now his eyes were glassy and vacant, and a breath reeking of alcohol escaped his lips. Beside him stood Pauline, the woman who, for months, had walked into their home as if it were her own. Laughing straight into Alice's face, Pauline held a phone, recording. Her smile was cruel, triumphant. "Look at you," Damien hissed through clenched teeth. His voice was low, menacing yet controlled, always controlled in case anyone could hear. "Lying here like a lunatic. Do you think anyone will believe you? That some crazy woman who imagines things, who lies, who can't be a normal wife?" Alice tried to speak, but only a sob escaped her throat. Tears mingled with sweat on her face. She knew what he was about to say. She had heard it hundreds of times, thousands, every day for 3 years of this marriage. "We have the documents," Damien continued, crouching beside her. His face was very close now, too close. Alice smelled the whiskey, the cigarettes, and Pauline's perfume clinging to his clothes. "Your own doctor confirmed you have self-destructive tendencies, that you are dangerous to yourself and others, especially to this," he pointed at her belly with contempt, "this bastard." "It's your baby," Alice whispered, her voice thin as a spiderweb. "Damien, it's your—" The blow came quickly, not with a fist. Damien never hit where it would show. His foot struck her side, exactly where the ribs met soft tissue. Alice writhed in pain, her scream echoing off the walls of this prison she once called home. "Don't you dare lie!" His voice finally lost control. "I know you cheated on me. I know it's not my child." But it was his child. Alice knew it with absolute certainty because, well, there was no one else. There had never been anyone else. For 3 years, she hadn't been allowed to leave the house without his permission. She wasn't allowed to talk to anyone. Cameras in every room recorded her every second. Her phone had been taken a year ago. Her job at the hospital, the work she loved which gave her purpose, had ended 2 months after their wedding when Damien declared that his wife does not need to work. Now she understood. She had understood. Then too, but she hadn't wanted to believe it. It wasn't about love. It had never been about love. It was about the townhouse. That old, beautiful townhouse in the center of the city, which she had inherited from her grandmother. The only thing she had ever owned. Damien had known about it from the start. He knew, and he planned. "Listen to me carefully." Pauline now knelt beside Damien, her voice like honey mixed with poison. "The doctor is coming tomorrow. The nice psychiatrist. You will sign the papers for voluntary admission to the hospital. Voluntary, do you understand? Because if you don't agree—" Her nails, long and painted blood red, touched Alice's cheek. "We will lock you up anyway. We already have everything arranged. The court, the documents, the witnesses." Alice closed her eyes. She knew this was the end. Images flashed in her mind. The orphanage where she grew up, where she prayed every night for a family. The day she met Damien, when she believed her prayers had been answered. Their wedding night when he hit her for the first time and told her it was her fault, that she provoked him. All those days, weeks, months, when she believed that if only she was better, calmer, kinder, everything would change. And then the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. Her heart had exploded with happiness then. A child. Her baby. She would finally have a family. She would be more than just an orphan no one wanted. She would be a mother. Damien took it differently. He screamed that she deceived him, that it was a trap. He demanded an abortion. When she refused, the violence intensified. The kicks no longer avoided her stomach. And then she discovered the truth. The townhouse had been sold. Her signature on the documents was forged. £3 million vanished in casinos. Her only security, her only hope, gone. "Get up!" Damien pulled her by the hair, forcing her to rise. Alice screamed, her hands instinctively reaching for her head, trying to ease the pain. "Get up," I said. "Pauline, record this. Show how aggressive she is." Pauline brought the phone closer. "Look, she's attacking me," she said to the camera, laughing. "See, she's a dangerous woman." Something in Alice snapped. Not physically. Physically, she had been broken for a long time. But something in her soul, in that last shred of hope that clung tightly to the illusion that everything might somehow work out. That snap was loud, though no one else heard it. That snap gave her something she hadn't had for years. Pure, untamed despair, so profound that it turned into courage. She didn't know where she found the strength. Her body was one large wound, her stomach painfully contracting, and she felt a warm moisture between her legs that could be blood. But when Damien loosened his grip, when he turned to say something to Pauline, Alice saw the opening. The bedroom door was open, the hallway, the stairs, the exit. She ran. She had never run so fast in her life. Her bare feet struck the cold tiles, then the wooden stairs. She heard Damien scream behind her, but she was already far away. The front door, thankfully, unlocked. She ran straight out into the night. The rain struck her like an icy whip. In a second, she was soaked to the bone. The temperature must have dropped. Her breath turned to vapor. A November night in London was merciless, but Alice did not stop. Run. Just run. The street was empty. What time was it? Midnight, 1 a.m. Streetlights cast a yellow, sickly light on the wet asphalt. She had nowhere to go. She no longer knew anyone. Damien had successfully isolated her. She had no family. The orphanage had been her family, and she left there 18 years ago. Friends, they had all vanished when marriage made her a prisoner. Money, she didn't have a penny, but she ran. Because if she stopped, if Damien caught her, this time she would surely die. She and her child. The pain in her abdomen grew. Alice pressed her hand to her body, feeling something. Damp, warmer than the rain, running down her thighs. "No, no, no," she prayed softly, sobbing. "Please don't take my baby from me. It's the only thing I have. The only one." The world began to spin. Was it from blood loss or exhaustion? She didn't know. Her legs felt like cotton. Black spots appeared before her eyes. She fell to her knees on the pavement where the rain washed the blood from her nightgown, leaving pink streaks that disappeared into the gutter. Someone was approaching her. She heard footsteps, heavy, masculine steps. Damien. He found her. It was over, but the voice she heard was not Damien's. My God! It was a deep, mature voice, full of shock. "What happened to you, ma'am?" Alice lifted her head. She saw the blurred silhouette of a man, tall, in a dark coat that shielded him from the rain. Beside him were other people, security. She was kneeling in front of an exclusive building. A hotel? Yes, it was the Crystal Hotel, a place she would never have stood in her life, if not for this night. "Help," she whispered. But she wasn't sure if the words even left her mouth. Her throat was so constricted from crying and screaming that she could only moan. The man knelt beside her, unconcerned that the wet pavement was staining his elegant coat. His face was closer now, sharp features, dark eyes filled with something Alice hadn't seen in years. Concern, genuine human concern. "She's bleeding," he said to someone behind him, his voice sharp, commanding, "Call an ambulance immediately and bring the car around. We can't wait." Strong arms lifted her gently. Alice wanted to protest, to say that she was dirty, that she would ruin his coat, that she didn't deserve kindness, but she had no strength. Her head fell onto someone's chest. She smelled expensive fabric, a subtle cologne that resembled nothing she knew from Damien's house. It was the scent of purity, of safety. "Hold on," the voice said, quiet now, almost tender. "Help is on the way. You have to be strong. It will be all right." But Alice didn't believe it. How could it be all right? Her life had never been all right. She was born unwanted. She grew up in the system. She found love that turned out to be a lie. Now she was losing her baby, her last spark of hope. Darkness consumed her. The last thing she heard was the wail of sirens. When she woke up, the first thing she felt was softness. Something beneath her was soft, warm. It smelled fresh, like sun-dried sheets. She didn't open her eyes yet, afraid it was a dream, that in a moment she would wake up on the cold floor with Damien's foot on her ribs. But the sounds were different. She didn't hear the television Damien always blasted. She didn't hear his snoring or Pauline's loud curses. She heard silence and a very gentle, rhythmic sound that she soon recognized as a pulse, her own pulse, monitored by some medical equipment. Slowly, she opened her eyes. She was in a room that looked like something out of a luxury magazine. The walls were the color of warm cream, the windows enormous, draped with delicate cream-colored curtains. The light was soft, subdued, not the harsh fluorescence of the hospital where she used to work. It was the light of carefully placed bedside lamps, not to hurt her eyes. The bed she lay on was wide, with a deep mattress that seemed to cradle her aching body. The sheets were silken to the touch. But the most important thing was what she felt in her belly. Alice pressed both hands to her abdomen, searching desperately. Was the baby? "She is safe." She turned her head so quickly that it spun. By the bed, in an armchair she hadn't noticed before, sat the man, the same one who had found her. In the lamplight, she saw him more clearly now, around 40, maybe a little older, with graying temples that gave him a distinguished look. His face was tired. Shadows under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept that night. He wore the same shirt as before, now crumpled, with an open collar. "Your child is alive," he said, seeing her questioning look. His voice was warm, reassuring. "The doctors say you were very lucky. If you had reached the hospital an hour later..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Alice began to cry. These were not the tears of despair she had cried for the last 3 years. These were tears of relief so enormous that her whole body shook with sobs. The baby was alive. Her baby was alive. The man remained silent, allowing her to cry. He didn't try to hush her or comfort her with empty words. He just sat, his presence calm, respecting her pain. After long minutes, Alice managed to speak. Where am I?" "In a private clinic," he replied. "My name is Maximilian White. This is my medical facility. When I found you last night, I couldn't let a normal ambulance take you to a public hospital. Your condition was critical. You needed the best care." Maximilian White. The name rang a bell. Where had she heard it? "Do you know who I am?" she asked quietly. Although she knew the answer, how could he know? "I found your documents in your nightgown pocket," he said. "Alice Smith. But no, I don't know what happened to you. I would like to know. If you'll let me." Fear constricted her throat. What if he didn't believe her? What if, like everyone else, he thought she was exaggerating, that she was making things up? Damien was so convincing, so charming to strangers. He always said no one would believe her. But something in this man's gaze made her want to talk. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, not with suspicion, not with judgment, but with concern. genuine concern, which she hadn't seen in anyone's eyes since her grandmother died. "My husband," she began, her voice already breaking. He used to hit me. He still does. For years. And yesterday he said they had the documents, that they would lock me up in a psychiatric hospital, that no one would believe me." Maximilian didn't interrupt. He didn't ask, "Are you sure?" or maybe it was a misunderstanding. He just listened. And Alice spoke. She told him everything, how she met Damien, how charming he was, how quickly he changed, about the townhouse he stole, about the isolation, the cameras in the apartment, how he hit her in places no one would see, about Pauline and her mocking laugh, about the pregnancy which should have been a blessing but became a reason for even greater violence, about the forged psychiatric documents, about everything. She spoke for a long time. Her voice was quiet, fragile, full of shame, even though she shouldn't feel ashamed. But this was the most human reflex. The victim always feels that it is somehow her fault. When she finished, silence fell in the room. Maximilian sat motionless, his jaw clenched, and something shone in his eyes that looked like anger. But not at her, never at her. "Please forgive me," he finally said, his voice hoarse. "I'm sorry that I couldn't protect you sooner, that it took so long." Alice looked at him, surprised. "But you didn't know. No one knew." "That's no excuse," he replied. He rose from the armchair, walked to the window, turning his back to her. His shoulders were tense. "I run a foundation to help victims of domestic violence. Every day I see reports, statistics, numbers. But numbers don't have faces. And you have a face, and suffering. And there came a moment when no one helped. He turned back to her, and his eyes were full of a determination that gave Alice a shiver. "I promise you one thing," he said slowly, clearly, as if taking an oath. "That man will never touch you again. Never. Neither he nor his accomplice. They will pay for what they did. And it's not just about revenge, it's about justice. True, deserved justice." Alice wanted to believe him, but after so many years of lies and illusions, it was hard for her to trust anyone. "You don't know Damien," she whispered. He's clever, he has documents, he has witnesses, And I have the truth," Maximilian interrupted, his voice like steel. "And I have resources, the best lawyers in the country, detectives, experts, and most importantly, I have you, alive, safe, and your testimony will be irrefutable." He walked to the bed, kneeling beside it, so that his eyes were level with hers. "Alice." He used her name for the first time, and it sounded different than from Damien's lips. It sounded like a blessing, not a curse. "I understand if you don't trust me, but please give me a chance to prove that there are still people who won't hurt you, who don't want anything in return. Stay here, in this safe place. Let my doctors take care of you and your child, and I will take care of the rest." His hand, large and warm, gently touched hers. He didn't squeeze. He didn't force. He simply touched, offering support, demanding nothing. And Alice, the woman who for so many years couldn't trust anyone, decided on an act of the purest faith. She nodded. The next few days were like a dream Alice was afraid to wake up from. The clinic she was in bore no resemblance to any hospital she had ever been in. Her room, to call it a ward would be an insult, was an apartment worthy of a 5-star hotel. She had her own bathroom with a huge tub where every evening she soaked her aching body in lavender-scented water. She had a wardrobe full of clothes, soft, comfortable maternity wear in pastel, colors that caressed her skin instead of hurting it. She even had a small balcony overlooking a park where autumn trees were slowly losing their last leaves. The doctors who cared for her were gentle and professional. Dr. Mason, an older gynecologist with a gentle smile, examined her daily, ensuring the baby was developing properly despite the trauma. "Your baby is strong," he told her. "A brave little girl. Because it's a girl," he added with a smile. "A girl." Alice cried with happiness. Hearing this, a daughter. She would have a daughter, but there were other people too. A psychologist, Dr. Collins, not the corrupt psychiatrist Damien had bribed, but a young, empathetic woman who met with Alice daily, helping her slowly rebuild her sense of self-worth. "It wasn't your fault," she repeated constantly. "Violence is never the victim's fault." Alice began to believe it, slowly in small steps, but she began to. Maximilian visited her every day. Not for long. He understood she needed space. He brought her books because he learned she loved to read. Sometimes he simply sat in the armchair, working on his laptop while she rested, his presence quiet, non-intrusive, yet comforting. He never crossed boundaries. He never touched her without permission. He treated her with the respect she had been denied for years. One day, when the rain hammered against the windows again, Maximilian brought her tea and sat by the bed. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice heavier than usual. "About why I reacted the way I did when I found you." Alice put down her book, looking at him intently. "5 years ago I was married," he said quietly, his eyes looking somewhere far away, as if seeing something she couldn't. "My wife, Caroline, was pregnant. We were expecting a son. I was the happiest man in the world." Alice already knew what she was about to hear. She knew that tone, the tone of a man who had lost everything. One evening, she was coming back from her hospital. She was a doctor, a pediatrician. She loved children. His voice trembled slightly. "A drunk driver ran a red light. He hit her car. She died instantly, she and our son." "I'm sorry," Alice whispered, feeling tears well up in her eyes. "For 5 years I lived like a machine," Maximilian continued. "I worked, I made money, I set up foundations, but none of it made sense. I felt empty until the night I found you." He looked at her now, his eyes full of sincerity. "When I saw you bleeding, terrified, fighting for your life and your child's, it was like a sign, a second chance. Not for me, for you. I thought, this time I can help. This time someone won't die because I was too late." "You saved my life," Alice said, her voice full of gratitude. "Mine and my daughter's." "We're not finished yet," he replied, a steely determination appearing in his eyes. "Damien and Pauline are still free, but I'm working on it. My people are gathering evidence. Everything they did, every lie, every crime. And when we are ready, we will hit them so hard that they will never hurt anyone again." Alice felt a mix of relief and fear. What if they find him? What if they come here? "They won't find this place," Maximilian assured her. "You have 24-hour protection. No one not on the list will enter this clinic. You are safe, Alice. I promise." And she believed him. A week passed in peace. Alice began to regain her strength. Her body was healing. The bruises were fading. Her ribs stopped hurting. But her soul was healing too. Therapy helped. Safety helped. The knowledge that she carried a healthy baby inside her helped the most. One afternoon, as she lay in bed reading the book Maximilian had brought her, the door opened abruptly. It was not a nurse, it was not a doctor, it was a young man in a suit, a member of Maximilian's legal team. His face was pale, strained. "Ma'am," he said quickly, "you need to know. Damien Smith has filed a lawsuit. He claims Mr. White kidnapped you. He is demanding the immediate return of his wife and the restoration of his paternal rights to the unborn child." Alice's world stopped. Everything she feared was starting to happen. Damien wouldn't give up. He would never give up. "That's not all," the lawyer continued, his voice even more strained. "The media. He went to the tabloids. The first articles are already out. He claims he is the poor victim, that you deceived him, that you abandoned him for a millionaire." Alice felt the room begin to spin. No, 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 no. This was his plan from the beginning, to destroy her credibility, to portray her as a liar, a fraud, a bad woman. "Where is Maximilian?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "On his way. He'll be here in 5 minutes," the lawyer assured her. "Please don't worry. We have a plan. We have evidence. But please be prepared. It will be tough. The media can be ruthless." When the lawyer left, Alice was alone. She looked out the window at the autumn trees, their branches bare and sad against the grey sky. She thought she had escaped, that she was safe. But Damien was still haunting her. He still held power over her life. And the worst thing was that she was afraid not only for herself. She was afraid for Maximilian. This good, noble man who helped her would now have his reputation destroyed. The media loved scandals. "Millionaire steals, poor man's wife." That was the headline that would sell thousands of copies. The Bajne's door opened again. This time it was Maximilian. His face was hard, determined. "You heard," he said. It wasn't a question. Alice nodded. "Listen to me." Maximilian walked up to her, sitting on the edge of the bed. "What is happening now is a classic abuser tactic. They try to divert attention, to make the victim look guilty. But we won't give up. Do you understand? But the media, your reputation." "I don't care about my reputation," he interrupted firmly. "I care about the truth. And I care about your safety. Damien thinks he can intimidate us. He thinks if he screams loud enough, we'll believe him. But he made a mistake." "What mistake?" Something that could be called cold satisfaction appeared in Maximilian's eyes. He stepped out of the shadows. For years he acted in hiding, hitting you behind closed doors where no one saw. But now, by deciding on a media campaign, he exposed himself to the light. And in the light, every lie becomes visible. He stood up, walking to the window. "My people have been working tirelessly for the past week. They found things Damien thought were well hidden. Financial transactions, security camera footage from outside the hotel the night I found you, witness statements. Your neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, was so terrified she kept silent for years. Now she is talking. Documents regarding the sale of the townhouse. We have proof of signature forgery. Everything." He turned back to her, his face full of determination. "So now comes the hardest part. We will have to fight, publicly, in court, in the media. It will be painful, but I promise you, you will not be alone. I will be by your side. My lawyers will be by your side. And in the end, when the truth comes out, Damien will get what he deserves." Alice looked at this man, this stranger who became her protector, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, tangible hope. "I trust you," she said quietly. Maximilian smiled. It was the first true smile she had seen on his face. "I will not fail you, Alice. I swear." The next day, the media storm peaked. Tabloids screamed on the front pages, "Millionaire steals pregnant wife, husband fights for his rights." Photos of Damien, carefully retouched, where he looked tired, distraught, were everywhere. He gave interviews tearfully recounting how he lost his beloved wife, how he tried to help her with her mental illness, how a rich predator took advantage of her weakness. Pauline also appeared in the media, presenting herself as a family friend who tried to save the marriage. Her fake tears were convincing, but Maximilian was not idle. That same evening, he organized a press conference. Alice stood backstage in the conference room at Maximilian's company headquarters, trembling. Her psychologist, Dr. Collins, held her hand. "You don't have to do this," the psychologist whispered. "We can fight without your public appearance." But Alice shook her head. "I have to. If I hide now, everyone will believe. Damien is right, that I'm weak, crazy. I have to show them the truth." On stage, Maximilian stood at the microphone, surrounded by his lawyers. The room was full of journalists, cameras and flashes. "Thank you for coming," Maximilian began. his voice calm but full of authority. "I have seen the recent articles. I have seen the lies spread by Mr. Damien Smith, and today I will present the facts." A projector turned on. On the screen appeared a recording. It was that fateful night. The hotel surveillance camera showed the pavement in front of the entrance. The time was 11:47 p.m., and suddenly in the frame, Alice appeared. The journalists fell silent. Alice in the video was a nightmare, barefoot, in a blood-stained nightgown that clung to her body. She stumbled, fell to her knees, tried to stand up. Her face, even on the grainy recording, was contorted with pain and terror. She did not look like someone abandoning her husband for a millionaire. She looked like someone fleeing from death. "This is Alice Smith on the night of November 23rd, Maximilian said. 20 minutes earlier, she fled her apartment where her husband, Damien Smith, and his mistress, Pauline Hayes, were brutalizing her, kicking her in the stomach. A woman, 6 months pregnant. The silence in the room was absolute. "Alice has agreed to speak today," Maximilian continued, "and I ask you, the media, the public, to listen to her story with an open heart. Because what you are about to hear is not easy, but it is the truth." He nodded toward the wings. Dr. Collins gently led Alice onto the stage. The spotlights were blinding. Alice blinked, trying to adjust her vision. She saw a sea of faces, some curious, some skeptical, some sympathetic. She approached the microphone. Her hands were trembling, so she clasped them behind her back so no one would see. "My name is Alice Smith," she began, her voice quiet, but the microphone carried it to every corner of the room. "And for 3 years, I was a victim of domestic violence." And she told them everything, about how she met Damien, about the flowers and poetry that turned into fists and insults, about the isolation, about the townhouse and its theft, about the pregnancy that was supposed to be a blessing but became the cause of an even greater nightmare. She hid nothing. She showed pictures of the bruises the doctors took after she arrived at the clinic. She showed the documents of signature forgery. She presented the testimony of Mrs. Johnson, the neighbor who had heard the screams for years. When she finished, there was silence in the room. Some journalists were crying, and then one of them raised her hand. "Mrs. Smith," said the middle-aged woman, "why didn't you leave sooner? Why did you stay with him for 3 years?" It was the question Alice had feared. The question always asked by those who don't understand. "Because I was afraid," she answered truthfully. "I was afraid they wouldn't believe me. I was afraid I had nowhere to go. I was afraid he would kill me if I tried. And the worst thing is," her voice broke, "I believed I loved him, that maybe he would change, that he would be better for our baby." She looked directly into the cameras. "But violence never changes. It never gets better, only worse. And if it weren't for Mr. White, my child and I would be dead today." The press conference changed everything. The next day, the media wrote differently. "Violence victim speaks. I was. In hell. Millionaire saves woman and child's lives. The truth about Damien Smith." Public opinion turned. People saw the video. They saw her tears. They saw the evidence. Damien tried to defend himself, giving more interviews, but his lies began to crumble under the weight of the facts. Pauline stopped speaking. Her lawyer advised silence. Alice returned to the clinic, emotionally exhausted, but she felt lighter. For the first time in her life, she had spoken the truth out loud, and people believed her. Maximilian waited for her in her room. When she entered, he stood up from the armchair. "You were incredible," he said quietly. "Brave." "I felt terrified," Alice admitted, sitting heavily on the bed. "Courage does not mean the absence of fear," he replied, sitting beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "It means acting despite fear. And you did that." They looked at each other for a long moment. In Maximilian's eyes, Alice saw something new: respect. admiration. "What? Now?" she asked. "Now," Maximilian sighed, "we prepare for the trial. Damien won't give up easily, but we have the evidence, we have the truth, and we will win." His phone rang. He answered, listened for a moment, and then his face changed. It hardened. "When?" he asked sharply. "I understand. Increase security immediately." He ended the call and looked at Alice. She saw anxiety in his eyes. "What happened?" she asked, feeling the fear return. "Damien," Maximilian said slowly, "just filed an urgent motion with the court for a writ of restoration to the marital home. He claims his wife is being held against her will, that she is being subjected to brainwashing. His lawyer is demanding that the court order me to immediately return you." He stopped, seeing the terror on Alice's face. "But I won't allow it," he said firmly. "No court in this country will issue such an order when we present the evidence, but..." He hesitated. "The hearing is set for the day after tomorrow. That's very fast, too fast." "What does that mean?" "It means someone is helping Damien," Maximilian replied, his voice full of anger. "Someone in the judicial system, someone who wants this to end quickly before the truth spreads." Alice felt the world begin to collapse again. Just when she thought she was safe, that the truth would triumph, the system was failing her. "I won't let him take me," she said quietly but firmly. "I'd rather die than go back to him." Maximilian took her hands in his. "You won't die, and you won't go back. I promise you. My lawyers are already working on it. Tomorrow, we will file our own lawsuit for divorce, a restraining order, and return of property. We will hit so hard that Damien won't know what hit him." He looked deep into her eyes. "Do you trust me?" Alice nodded. "I trust you." But late at night, when she was alone in the darkness of her room, the fear returned. What if the court sided with Damien? What if his lies were more convincing than her truth? What if... She pressed her hands to her abdomen, feeling the gentle kick of her baby girl. "I won't let him hurt you," she whispered to the child. "I promise, I'm fighting for you." And in that darkness, in that silence, Alice made a decision. No matter what tomorrow brought, she would not give up. She would fight for herself, for her child, for all the women who were still living in the hell she managed to escape. But outside the window, in the city's darkness, Damien Smith was also awake. He sat in a cheap hotel where he had checked in after the money ran out, and he planned. He planned how to regain control, how to destroy that arrogant millionaire, how to take Alice and that cursed child. Because in his twisted mind, Alice still belonged to him, and no one would take her away from him. Tomorrow, in court, everything would be decided. Dawn came too quickly. Alice hadn't slept that night. How could she? She lay in the luxury sheets, staring at the ceiling, feeling her daughter kick. Gently in her belly, as if saying, "Mommy, I'm here, we're together." It was the only thing that kept her from complete panic. At 6 in the morning, the door to her room opened quietly. It was Maximilian. He looked just as sleepless. His eyes were shadowed, his shirt wrinkled as if he had spent the night in the office. He probably had. "Good morning," he said quietly, carrying a tray with tea and a light breakfast. "I thought you might be hungry." Alice sat up in bed, clutching the duvet. "I can't eat. My stomach is knotted." "You must," he replied gently, setting the tray on the bedside table. "For the baby. Today will be a long day. You need strength." He was right. He was always right. Alice reached for a piece of toast. Although every bite felt heavy as a stone, Maximilian sat in the chair next to the bed, his face serious. "I need to tell you what will happen today, so you are prepared." Alice nodded, putting down the toast. Her hands were trembling. "The hearing will be presided over by Judge Andrew Collins. He's an experienced judge, a man of principles. My lawyers checked his history." "He is fair," Maximilian began. "Damien filed for an immediate order restoring marital rights, which would practically mean forcing you to return. But we filed a countersuit for divorce based on his fault, a restraining order, and compensation for violence and theft of property. And what if the judge believes him? Alice's voice was barely audible. He won't believe him, Maximilian said with such certainty that Alice almost believed him. We have irrefutable evidence. The surveillance video, medical documentation from the night I found you, photos of injuries, a description of 2 broken ribs, internal bleeding, the handwriting expert who will confirm the forgery of your signature on the townhouse sale documents. And most importantly, we have Mrs. Johnson. The neighbor? Your neighbor, he nodded. A 78-year-old woman who heard everything for 3 years. Screams, pleas, blows. She was afraid to speak because Damien threatened her. But now that she knows you're safe, she decided to testify. Her testimony will be crucial. Alice felt a wave of gratitude toward this elderly woman she barely knew. I want to thank her. You will have a chance, Maximilian replied. She will be in court today. But Alice, his voice became more serious. I must warn you, Damien's lawyer will be ruthless. He will try to portray you as unstable, lying, and opportunistic. He will ask difficult questions, asking why you didn't leave sooner, why you didn't go to the police. He will try to make you feel guilty. I already feel guilty, Alice whispered. Maximilian leaned forward, taking her hand. Listen to me carefully. None of what happened is your fault, none of it. Violence is the choice of the perpetrator, never the victim. When you testify, look at me, look at your lawyers. Don't look at Damien. Don't give him power over. You tell the truth, the simple, pure truth, that's all we need. His grip was firm, warm, full of strength. Alice closed her eyes and nodded. I can do this, she said, more to herself than to him. I have to do this. The courthouse looked like a fortress. Tall stone walls, heavy oak doors, statues of justice with blindfolds. Alice stood before the entrance, surrounded by Maximilian's people. 2 bodyguards, 3 lawyers, Maximilian himself. Despite this, she felt naked, defenseless. The media were already there. Cameras, journalists, reporters with microphones. As soon as she got out of the car, flashes began to burst like a thunderstorm. Mrs. Alice, is it true you left your husband for money? Mrs. Smith, why didn't you go to the police if you were really being beaten? Is it true you suffer from a mental illness? Voices attacked her from all sides. Alice crouched, pressing her bag to her chest. Maximilian immediately put his arm around her, not in a romantic way, but protectively, like a brother shielding his sister. Please step back. His voice was sharp, commanding. Mrs. Smith will not be giving interviews before the hearing. Respect her space. Bodyguards cleared a path through the crowd. Alice kept close to Maximilian, smelling his cologne, something fresh, clean, so different from Damien's stench of alcohol. They went inside. The court hallway was cool, echoes bounced off the marble walls. Other people waited for their hearings. Divorces, criminal cases, civil disputes, lives falling apart in the cold light of the law. And then Alice saw him. Damien stood by the window at the end of the corridor. He was wearing a suit, not new, a bit too big, as if he had lost weight. But his hair was neatly combed, his face shaven. He looked normal, like an average man, maybe a bit tired, maybe a bit sad. He didn't look like a monster. That was the most terrifying thing. That monsters don't look like monsters. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Damien's mask dropped. Only for a second, but Alice saw it, that cold, furious glint, that promise of revenge. Then it was back to the smile, the sad, longing smile of a man who missed his wife. Alice looked away, feeling nauseous. Don't look at him, Maximilian whispered. He no longer has power over you. But was it true? Courtroom number 3 was smaller than she expected. The public benches were full, journalists, activists, ordinary people who had read about the case. Alice saw Mrs. Johnson sitting in the first row, her old hands clenched on her purse. The elderly woman gave her a gentle, compassionate smile. On the right sat Damien with his lawyer, a young, aggressive man in an overly elegant suit. Beside him, Pauline, dressed conservatively, hair tied back, minimal makeup. She was trying to look like a decent, concerned friend. Alice sat on the left, between Maximilian and the lead lawyer, Ms. Camilla Bell, a sharp woman in her 50s with a reputation as a courtroom iron. "Lady, all rise," called the clerk. Everyone stood up. Judge Andrew Collins entered, a tall, grey-haired man in a robe, his face stern but not cruel. He sat behind the tall desk, adjusted his glasses, and opened the files. Case number 2473-2024. Damien Smith's motion for restoration to the marital home and Alice Smith's countersuit for divorce based on fault. The judge's voice filled the room. "Are the parties ready?" "Yes, Your Honor," both lawyers replied simultaneously. The judge nodded. "We shall begin. Counsel for the plaintiff, Mr. Grabowski, please present your arguments." Damien's lawyer stood up, straightening his suit. He had a self-assurance on his face that gave Alice the shivers. "Your Honor," he began, his voice smooth, convincing. "My client, Mr. Damien Smith, is a distraught husband whose wife was taken from him under the pretense of rescue. But the truth is more complicated. Mrs. Alice Smith suffers from borderline personality disorder, confirmed by a certified psychiatrist. She has a history of self-destructive behavior, tendencies toward pathological lying, and emotional instability." Alice clenched her fists. Every word was like a blow. "In a moment of emotional crisis," the lawyer continued, "she left my client in the middle of the night, in a state of such confusion that she ran out in just her underwear. My client immediately tried to look for her, but before he could, she was intercepted by Mr. Maximilian White, a millionaire with a financial interest in destabilizing this marriage." "Objection," Ms. Bell cut in. "Groundless insinuations." "Sustained," the judge nodded. "Mr. Grabowski, let's stick to the facts." The lawyer smiled slightly. "Of course, Your Honor. The facts are, Mrs. Smith is being held in Mr. White's private clinic, cut off from her husband, undergoing intensive psychological therapy that, in my opinion, may amount to brainwashing. My client demands the restoration of his marital rights and the right to custody of his unborn child, who is his offspring." He sat down, looking satisfied. The judge turned to Ms. Bell. "Counsel for the defendant?" Ms. Bell stood up slowly, gathering her notes. When she spoke, her voice was razor-sharp. "Your Honor, what we have just heard is a classic domestic abuser tactic, role reversal, portraying the victim as the aggressor, portraying the rescuer as a manipulator. But the facts, the real, verifiable facts, tell a different story." She walked to the projector and turned it on. An image appeared on the white screen. It was the hotel camera footage. "This is Mrs. Alice Smith on the night of November 23rd at 11:47 p.m., Ms. Bell said. "Please observe carefully." The room fell silent. Everyone watched. On the screen, Alice was a ghost, barefoot, her blood-stained nightgown clinging to her body, her hair wet from the rain, her face contorted with pain. She stumbled, fell to her knees, pressed her hand to her abdomen. She tried to stand up, fell again. Her lips moved. She looked like she was pleading, although there was no sound. Some people in the room gasped. One woman in the public gallery wiped away tears. "Does this look like a person who, in an emotional crisis, decided to leave her husband?" Ms. Bell looked at the judge. "Does this look like someone acting out of malice?" Damien's lawyer jumped up. "Your Honor, this only shows that my client needed psychiatric help, not..." "Silence!" The judge raised his hand. "Ms. Bell, please continue." Ms. Bell changed the slide. Now medical photos were on the screen. Alice's body covered in bruises in various stages of healing, broken ribs visible on the X-ray, internal hematoma. These are photos taken the same night at Mr. White's private clinic, the lawyer said. 2 broken ribs, an extensive hematoma on the abdomen, internal bleeding threatening the life of the fetus, head injuries. And, Your Honor, she paused for effect, these bruises were not new. Some were weeks old, some months. This was a pattern of long-term, systematic violence. Damien jumped up from his chair. It's a lie. She tripped. She was clumsy. She always tripped. Order in the court. The judge slammed his gavel. Mr. Smith, please sit down. You will have your turn. Damien sat down, but his face was red with fury. Alice saw his hands clench into fists. She knew that look. It was the same look he had just before hitting her. Maximilian gently touched her shoulder, reminding her, I'm here. You are safe. Ms. Bell continued, methodically building the case. She presented the documents for the sale of the townhouse, the originals and those with Alice's signature. Your Honor, I asked a handwriting expert, Professor Maria White from London University, to analyze these signatures, the lawyer said. Professor? A small woman in glasses stood up from the back of the room, carrying a briefcase. She approached the witness stand and took the oath. Professor, Ms. Bell began, did you have the opportunity to examine the townhouse sale documents allegedly signed by Mrs. Alice Smith? Yes. The professor's voice was quiet but confident. I conducted a detailed graphological analysis of both signatures, the authentic one from Mrs. Smith's ID and the one on the sale documents. And what are your conclusions? The signature on the sale documents is a forgery, the professor answered without hesitation. The characteristics of Mrs. Smith's handwriting, the slant, the pressure, the way the letters are connected, are completely different. Furthermore, the signature on the sale document shows hesitation, corrections, suggesting that the person performing it was copying a model, not writing naturally. Damien's lawyer jumped up. Objection! This is just one expert's opinion, which is supported by 20 years of experience and hundreds of court cases, Ms. Bell countered. The professor has been an expert witness for the Supreme Court. The judge nodded. Objection overruled. The testimony is accepted. Alice felt the tension in her chest slightly ease. First point to them, but Damien's lawyer didn't give up. When his turn came to cross-examine the professor, he attacked. Professor, is it possible that Mrs. Smith simply changed her way of writing? People sometimes do that, right? Certain changes are possible, the professor admitted, but such fundamental differences, as in this case, are practically impossible. This is not handwriting evolution. These are 2 completely different signatures, but you cannot be 100% certain. In science, rarely anything is 100% certain, the professor replied calmly. But in this case, I am 98% certain. It is a forgery. The lawyer had no further questions. The next witness was the breakthrough. Ms. Bell called Mrs. Johnson. The elderly woman approached the witness stand slowly, leaning on a cane. Her hands trembled as she took the oath. Sitting, she looked even, smaller, more fragile. Mrs. Johnson, Ms. Bell began gently, how long were you the Smiths' neighbor? 3 years, the elderly woman replied, her voice thin but clear. Since they got married, I lived next door. And what did you observe during those 3 years? Mrs. Johnson sighed, her eyes filling with tears. Screams. I heard screams almost every night. Please, please stop. I'm sorry. Don't hit me. The voice of that poor girl. Did you hear anything else? Bumps, crashes, sometimes crying, sometimes a silence that was worse than the screams. Mrs. Johnson wiped her tears with a handkerchief. Once, maybe 6 months ago, I met Alice on the staircase. She had a black eye. She said she hit herself on the cupboard door. But I knew. Why didn't you go to the police? The elderly woman lowered her head, ashamed. I was afraid. He Mr. Smith, he came to me once. He said if I talked to the neighbors or the police about private matters, he would hurt me. I'm an old woman. I live alone. I was scared. I understand, Ms. Bell said warmly without judgment. Thank you for your courage in testifying now. Damien's lawyer stood up for cross-examination, and his tone was aggressive. Mrs. Johnson, do you wear a hearing aid? Yes, the elderly woman admitted. So your hearing is not perfect. Is it possible that you misheard? That what you thought were screams was, for example, the television? Mrs. Johnson looked at him with the dignity she had retained despite the years. Young man, I'm 78, but I'm not stupid. I know the difference between a television and a woman begging for her life. A murmur of approval rippled through the room. The judge slammed his gavel, restoring silence. And your account of the black eye, did you see my client hit her? Or could Mrs. Smith have really hit herself on a door? The girl looked terrified, Mrs. Johnson replied. She was trembling. She could barely look at me. That's not how someone who accidentally tripped looks. The lawyer had no further questions. As Mrs. Johnson stepped down from the stand, Alice caught her eye. The elderly woman smiled sadly, as if to say, "Hang in there, child." The judge announced a recess. Alice walked out into the corridor, surrounded by her lawyers. Her legs felt like cotton wool, her heart hammered like a drum. Maximilian brought her water. "You're doing well," he said. "See, the truth is coming out." But Alice didn't, and feel confident. "We're not finished yet, and I will have to testify, right?" "After the break," Ms. Bell confirmed. "But you'll be ready. Remember, the truth, only the truth. And don't look at him." As they returned to the courtroom, Alice saw Pauline talking nervously with Damien. Something was wrong. Their body language was tense, filled with fear. The hearing resumed. The judge looked at the witness list. The plaintiff calls a witness, Ms. Pauline Hayes. Pauline stood up, smoothing her skirt. She walked to the witness stand, her high heels clicking on the marble floor. She took the oath, but her voice trembled. Damien's lawyer began gently. "Ms. Hayes, how long have you known the Smiths?" "About a year," Pauline replied. "I'm a friend of the family." "A friend," the lawyer repeated. "And what did you observe in this marriage?" "Alice was unstable," Pauline said, but she sounded unconvincing. "She had mood swings. Sometimes she was aggressive toward Damien. Once I saw her throw a plate at him. And Mr. Smith, how did he behave?" "He was patient. He tried to help her. He loved her despite everything." Ms. Bell stood up for cross-examination, and now her eyes were like lasers. "Ms. Hayes, you said you are a friend of the family. Is that entirely truthful?" Pauline blinked. "I don't understand the question. Is it not true that your relationship with Mr. Smith is more than just friendship?" Ms. Bell threw the question like a knife. "No, Is it not true that for 6 months you have been having an affair with Mr. Smith?" The room erupted in a murmur. The judge slammed his gavel. Pauline turned pale. It's not like that. We have sworn testimony from employees at the Europa Hotel, where you regularly rented a room under false names." Ms. Bell stepped closer. "We have security camera footage. We have evidence of transfers that Mr. Smith made to your account. Money that came from the sale of the townhouse belonging to Mrs. Alice Smith." Pauline looked around desperately, seeking help. Her lawyer tried to intervene, but the judge silenced him. "Is it not true," Ms. Bell continued mercilessly, "that you and Mr. Smith planned to get rid of Mrs. Alice to take over her property? That you forged psychiatric documents to lock her in an institution?" "No, I didn't." Pauline began to cry, but these were not tears of remorse. They were the tears of someone who had been caught. "Your Honor," Ms. Bell turned to the judge. "I have here emails between Ms. Hayes and Mr. Smith, found by our detectives in the cloud. I request permission to present them." The judge nodded. The emails appeared on the screen. Each one was a nail in the coffin. From paulinehayesemail.com to dsmithemail.com. Date, October 15th, 2024. Subject, the plan. Damien, I spoke with the doctor. He'll sign the documents for 50K. But you have to do it fast, before anyone starts asking questions. As soon as we lock her up, the townhouse will be tea. Oz, from dsmithemail.com to pauline.hayesemail.com. Date, October 20th, 2024. Subject, the plan done. The doctor agreed. Now I just need to convince Alice to go voluntarily, or I'll handle it another way. Either way, it will be over by the end of the month. The silence in the room was absolute. Everyone looked at Pauline and Damien. Pauline broke down. I didn't want to. It was his idea. He forced me. Shut up! Damien screamed, jumping up. You stupid bitch, shut up! Order! The judge slammed the gavel repeatedly. Mr. Smith, one more outburst and you will be removed from the courtroom. But Pauline had started talking and couldn't stop. The words poured out of her like a broken dam. He said we would be together, that as soon as we got rid of her, we would take the money and start a new life. He said she was crazy, that no one would believe her. I just wanted a better life, do you understand? I had nothing, and he promised me everything. Did you participate in the violence against Mrs. Alice? Miss Bell asked. Pauline nodded, sobbing. I was there that night, when he kicked her. I was recording. It was supposed to be proof that she was aggressive. But now I see it was cruel. She was just trying to protect herself and her baby. Do you have that recording? Yes, on my phone. Please hand it over to the court. Pauline, with trembling hands, took out her phone and handed it to the court clerk. Damien was pale as a ghost. His lawyer whispered something to him frantically, but Damien pushed him away. The recording was played, not for the entire room. The judge decided it was too graphic, but for the jury box and the lawyers. Alice didn't need to watch it. She remembered that night too well, but she saw the faces of those who were watching. She saw Miss Bell clench her jaw. She saw the judge turn pale. She saw one of the journalists leave the room to vomit. When the recording ended, the judge closed his eyes for a long moment. That is enough for today, he said, his voice tired, heavy. I adjourn the hearing until tomorrow, 10 o'clock. I warn both sides, no contact with witnesses. Ms. Hayes, you are currently suspected of complicity in a crime. Please remain available to the court. He slammed the gavel. Everyone stood up. As Alice left, she felt like she had run a marathon. Maximilian supported her by the arm. We did it, he whispered. The truth came out. But Alice saw Damien in the crowd. He stood motionless, staring at her. And in his eyes, there was no more pretense. There was only pure, naked hatred. It's not over, Alice whispered. He will do something. I know him. Security will be with you constantly, Maximilian interrupted. I won't let him get near you. But as they returned to the car, Alice felt a dread in her bones. Damien never lost easily, and a man who has lost everything is the most dangerous. The night was long and full of shadows. Alice returned to the clinic, but she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, pressing her hands to her abdomen, feeling the kicks of her baby girl. I'm sorry, she whispered to the child. I'm sorry I brought you into this world full of pain, but I promise it will be better. At 3 a.m, she heard an alarm. Screams. The sound of running feet in the corridor. Maximilian rushed into her room, followed by security. What's happening? Alice jumped out of bed, terrified. Damien, Maximilian said, his face hard. He tried to get into the clinic. He had a knife. Alice's world stopped. Security stopped him, Maximilian added quickly. The police took him away. But Alice, this changes everything. Attempted assault with a weapon. This is now a criminal case, not just a civil one. Alice sat heavily on the bed, trembling. He wanted to kill me. We didn't let him. Maximilian knelt beside her. and now we certainly won't. But the fear did not leave Alice, because she knew that Damien, even behind bars, still lived in her head, in her nightmares, in her fear. The next day, the courtroom was even more tense. Word of the nocturnal incident had spread. The media was frantic. The judge entered with a severity on his face. "I inform you that Mr. Damien Smith was arrested last night on suspicion of attempted assault with a dangerous weapon. He will be brought here from custody to conclude the civil hearing, after which he will be handed over to the prosecutor's office." Damien entered. In handcuffs, led by 2 guards. He looked different, unwashed, unshaven, in prison fatigues. The mask had completely fallen. He was now what he had always been, a monster. The judge looked at him with cold contempt. "Mr. Smith, do you have anything to say in your defense?" Damien was silent. His lawyer looked like a man who knew he had lost. "In that case, we will proceed to the verdict." The judge opened the documents. "Regarding the motion for restoration of marital rights, I reject it in its entirety. Regarding the countersuit for divorce based on fault, I grant it. The marriage of Alice and Damien Smith is dissolved due to the exclusive fault of the husband." Alice felt her heart explode with relief. "Additionally," the judge continued, "I order Mr. Smith to return £3 million plus interest for the illegal sale of the townhouse. I issue a lifetime restraining order against Mr. Smith concerning Mrs. Alice Smith and her child. All documents concerning Mrs. Smith's alleged mental illness are annulled as forgeries." He slammed the gavel. Case concluded. The room erupted. Journalists rushed out to report the news. Activists applauded. Mrs. Johnson wept with joy. Alice turned to Maximilian, and for the first time in weeks, months, years, she smiled genuinely. "We won," she whispered. "You won," Maximilian corrected her. "You won. Your courage, your truth." Damien was being led out. But at the last moment he turned, shouting, "It's not over! I'll be back! I'll find you!" But his voice faded, and the doors closed. And Alice knew that this time she was truly free. A week later, Alice stood in front of the building that was once her townhouse. The court had ordered its return. The building was old, in need of renovation, but it was beautiful. Her grandmother loved it. Now Alice would love it too. Maximilian stood beside her. "What do you want to do with it?" Alice looked at the townhouse, then touched her belly. Her daughter kicked, as if saying, "I'm here." "Mummy, I want to turn it into a shelter," she said quietly, "for women like me, who are running away, who need safety. I will give them a place where they can start over." Maximilian smiled. "That's a beautiful idea. I'll help you." "You don't have to," Alice began. "I want to," he interrupted. "Alice, I learned something over the past weeks. Life gave me a second chance, a chance to protect someone I couldn't protect before. And I want to continue, with you, with your daughter, with other women who need help, if you let me." Alice looked at this man, this good, noble man who restored her faith in people. "I will let you," she replied. And as the sun set over London, casting a golden light on the old townhouse, Alice finally felt like she had come home, a true home. 3 months after the trial, as January covered London in snow, Alice Smith woke up in a room she was slowly beginning to call her own. She was no longer at the clinic. A week ago, she had moved into a small, cozy apartment Maximilian had rented for her in a safe district. The apartment had everything she needed: a bedroom with a park view, a small room that was slowly turning into a nursery, a sun-filled kitchen. But the most important thing was that it was hers, only hers. No one controlled when she went out. No one checked her phone. No one yelled, hit, or demeaned her. For the first time in her life, Alice Smith was free. She got up slowly. Her belly was huge now. 8 months pregnant made every movement a challenge. She walked to the bathroom mirror and looked at herself. Her face had regained color. Her eyes were no longer perpetually swollen from crying. Her hair, which Damien had forced her to wear tied back, because you looked like a slut with it down, now fell freely over her shoulders. She wore comfortable blue maternity pajamas. She chose them herself, in a store where the saleswoman smiled at her and said, "You will be a beautiful mother." Mother. In a few weeks, she would be a mother. The thought still both terrified and filled her with joy. The doorbell rang. Alice looked through the peephole. It was Maximilian, as every morning. He carried a bag of pastries from her favorite bakery. She opened the door, smiling. "Good morning?" "Good morning," Maximilian replied, walking in. His hair was wet with snow, his cheeks flushed from the cold. "I brought breakfast. And this." He took a small blue toy, a plush teddy bear, from his pocket. Alice gasped. "Maximilian, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to," he interrupted gently, "but I want to. Every little girl needs her first teddy." Alice took the bear in her hands, pressing it to her chest. Tears welled up in her eyes. Lately she cried for every reason. Pregnancy hormones were merciless. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, for the breakfast, for this bear, for saving my life." Maximilian led her to the kitchen, seating her at the table. He brewed tea. He already knew she liked it weak, with honey and lemon. "Stop thanking me," he said, but there was warmth in his voice. "I'm doing what should be obvious, helping someone who needs it." "But most people don't help," Alice replied quietly. "Most people walk by." They sat in silence, eating croissants. Through the window, they could see the snow falling lazily, blanketing the world in white. It was peaceful, safe. "How is the little one feeling?" Maximilian asked, pointing to her belly. "She kicks like crazy at 3 in the morning." Alice laughed. "I think she'll be a footballer." "Or a dancer," Maximilian smiled. "Caroline always said that babies who kick a lot are full of life." Caroline, his late wife. Maximilian rarely spoke of her, but when he did, his voice was always full of love and pain. "Will you tell me about her?" Alice asked gently. "If you want to." Maximilian looked out the window, his eyes far away. After a long moment, he began to speak. "We met at university. She studied medicine, I studied engineering. She was like the sun. Everywhere she went, it became brighter," he smiled sadly. "We got married young, maybe too young, but I don't regret a single day. For 10 years, she was everything to me. And then the accident," Alice whispered. "The accident," Maximilian confirmed, his voice hardening. "A drunk driver, a 22-year-old boy coming back from a party. He ran a red light. Caroline was pregnant, 8 months. We had the nursery ready. We had chosen a name, Michael, and then everything ended." Alice reached across the table, touching his hand. "I'm sorry. For 5 years, I hated the world," Maximilian continued. "I asked God why. Why them, and not that drunken fool who survived unscathed? I thought about revenge, about justice. I established the foundation not out of kindness, but out of anger. I wanted to fight the system that allowed it." He looked at Alice now, his eyes moist. "But then I found you, and everything made sense. Maybe I couldn't save Caroline and Michael, but I could save you and your daughter, and that gave me purpose again, hope." Alice was openly weeping now. "You saved us. You really did save us." They sat in silence, holding hands. Two wounded souls who found in each other not romance, at least not yet, but something deeper. Understanding, safety, family. Days turned into weeks. Alice went to therapy 3 times a week. Dr. Collins helped her process the trauma, learned that the violence wasn't her fault, that she deserved love and respect. It was hard work. Some days Alice cried through the entire session. Other days she felt strong, ready for anything. Maximilian was present, but never pushy. He came daily, brought food, sometimes just sat and worked on his laptop while Alice read or rested. His presence became part of her routine, part of her new, normal life. But there were other things too. The townhouse. Alice spent hours with architects, planning the reconstruction. The old building required a lot of work. New electrical wiring, window replacement, bathroom modernization, but they would preserve its soul. The wooden stairs, high ceilings, beautiful stucco work. It will have 20 rooms, Alice said, showing the plans to Maximilian. Each with its own bathroom. There will be a kitchen where the women can cook together, a playroom for the children, a therapy room, and it will be safe, an alarm, cameras, security. It will be a beautiful place, Maximilian said, looking at the plans. The House of Hope. That's what you want to call it, right? The House of Hope. The Sophia Foundation, Alice corrected him. For Mrs. Johnson, who found the courage. And for all the women who are still looking for the courage to escape. Maximilian smiled. Caroline would have loved that. She was a great advocate for helping others. Maximilian's foundation funded most of the renovation, but Alice also contributed. The money the court ordered Damien to return was seized from his bank. Account and given back to her. £3 million. It was more than she had ever had, and now she could use it for good. But not everything was easy. At night, Alice still had nightmares. She dreamed of Damien, his face, his fists, his voice screaming, "You are nothing." She woke up in a panic, trembling, checking if the door was locked. One night, when the nightmare was particularly bad, she called Maximilian. It was 3 a.m. "I'm sorry," she whispered when he answered. "I shouldn't have. Are you having a nightmare?" His voice was immediately alert, full of concern. "Yes." "Stay on the phone. Start breathing deeply like your therapist taught you. We'll count together." And for the next 15 minutes, Maximilian counted with her, his voice calm, steady, anchoring her to reality. "Better?" he asked finally. "Better," Alice admitted. "Thank you. And I'm sorry I woke you." "Never apologize for needing help," he interrupted firmly. "Do you understand?" "Never." After that, Alice started calling more often when she had bad days, and Maximilian always answered. He was always there. In mid-February, a letter arrived. Alice recognized the handwriting on the envelope, and her blood ran cold. Damien. For a long moment, she just stared at the letter, holding it like something radioactive. Should she open it, throw it away, give it to the police? She finally decided to open it, but not alone. She called Maximilian. When he arrived, he found her sitting at the table, the letter still unopened before her. "It's from him," she said quietly. Maximilian sat beside her. "You don't have to read it." "But I want to," Alice replied. "I need to know. I need to close this chapter within myself." With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, the handwriting messy, as if written in anger. "Alice, I'm lying in my cell and thinking about you, about what you did. You destroyed my life. Everything I worked for, everything I planned, gone because of you and that arrogant rich man. I want you to know that I hate you. I hate you with every fiber of my being. I was in love with you once, you know? In the beginning, I thought we would be happy, but you couldn't be a good wife. You were always crying, always complaining, always weak. Pauline told them everything. She betrayed me because she's a coward. But I won't do that. I've done my time here. I've paid the price. And when I get out, and I will get out, remember that, I will find you. No matter where you are, no matter how well your millionaire protects you, I will find you. But you know what's funny? I think a part of me still loves you. That sick, twisted part. Because you were mine. No one else understands you like I do. No one else knows what you're really like. Weak, scared, needing someone to tell you what to do. Maybe one day you'll realize you should have stayed. That together we could have been happy. But now it's too late. D. Alice finished reading, and her hands were trembling so much that the letter fell onto the table. She felt nauseous, scared, but also something else. Anger. "This is sick," she said, her voice full of rage. "He still thinks he has power over me, that I belong to him, that—" "It's a classic tactic," Maximilian interrupted, his voice firm. "He's trying to scare you. But Alice, he got 6 years. With good behavior, he might get out in 4, but by then you will be strong. Your child will be older, and he will be nobody, a convict with no future." "What if he finds a way?" Alice whispered. "If he won't find a way." Maximilian took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "You have a restraining order. If he tries to contact you, he goes straight back to prison, and I will protect you, always." Alice looked into his eyes, those dark, sincere eyes, and she believed him. "Let's destroy this letter," she said. "I don't want to see it again." They walked to the fireplace. Maximilian had recently installed it in her living room. Alice threw the letter into the fire, watching Damien's words turn to ash. "He no longer has power," she whispered, watching the last flames die out. "No longer." 3 weeks later, in the middle of a March night, Alice woke up with a sharp pain in her lower abdomen. For a moment, she thought it was just Braxton Hicks contractions. She'd been having them for the last month. But then the pain intensified, and she felt something warm between her legs. Her water had broken. The baby was coming. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone and called Maximilian. "Maximilian!" Her voice trembled. "It's happening. The baby is coming. I'm on my way." His voice was instantly in action mode. "I'm calling an ambulance. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Breathe, Alice. Everything will be fine." The next 10 minutes were an eternity. Alice sat on the bed, clutching her abdomen, trying to breathe through the contractions. She was afraid. She was afraid of the labor. She was afraid of the pain. But most of all, she was afraid she wouldn't be a good mother, that the trauma she carried would somehow harm her child. Maximilian rushed into the apartment. He must have had a spare key. His face was pale, but his eyes were full of determination. "I'm here," he said, kneeling beside her. "I'm here, Alice. You're not alone." The ambulance arrived minutes later. Alice was transferred to a stretcher, Maximilian holding her hand the whole way to the hospital. The labor lasted 8 hours, 8 hours of pain, fear, and exhaustion, but Maximilian was with her the entire time. He held her hand, wiped the sweat from her forehead, and said, "You are strong. You can do this. You're almost there." And finally, as the sun rose over London, filling the delivery room with golden light, she heard it. A cry. A loud, healthy, angry cry of a newborn. "It's a girl!" the midwife announced, lifting the small, blood-covered body. "A healthy girl!" Alice reached out, and the midwife placed the baby on her chest. And as she looked down at that tiny, squinting face, at those little fists waving in the air, something in her broke and healed at the same time. "Hello," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, my daughter. I am your mother, and I will love you every day of your life." Maximilian stood beside her, looking at the scene, his own eyes moist. When Alice looked up, she saw something beautiful in his face. Joy, love, relief. "What do you want to name her?" he asked quietly. Alice looked at her daughter, at those dark eyes that were slowly opening, looking at the world for the first time. "Sophia," she said without hesitation. "Sophia Caroline." "For the 2 women who gave me courage," Maximilian gasped. "Caroline?" "If you allow it," Alice whispered. "Your wife, she gave you the strength to save me. In a way, she saved me too." Maximilian leaned down, kissing Alice on the forehead. The first time he had touched her in that way. "It's a beautiful name," he whispered. "Caroline would be honored." The next few weeks were a chaos of the most beautiful kind. Alice learned to be a mother. She fed Sophia, changed diapers, soothed her when she cried at 3 in the morning. It was exhausting and wonderful at the same time. Maximilian was a constant presence. He helped with groceries, with cooking, with the impossible amount of laundry that one small baby generated. But more importantly, he was there, emotionally. When Alice cried from exhaustion, he took Sophia, allowing her to sleep. When she worried that she was doing everything wrong, he reminded her that every new mom learns. "You are a wonderful mother," he told her one day when he found her crying over the sleeping Sophia. "Why are you crying?" "Because I'm afraid," Alice admitted. "I'm afraid that the trauma I went through will somehow harm her, that I won't be able to give her a normal life." Maximilian sat beside her, looking at the sleeping girl. "You know what causes a child trauma, not what the mother went through before its birth, but whether the child grows up in love or in fear. And Sophia," he smiled, "Sophia will grow up loved, safe, with a mother who went through hell and came out stronger. That is the greatest gift." Alice rested her head on his shoulder, and in that moment, she realized something that had been growing for months. She loved Maximilian, not in the way she had loved Damien, that desperate, needy love that sought rescue. This was a different love, more mature, more equal, a love built on respect, friendship, and mutual support. But she was afraid to say it, because what if he didn't feel the same way? What if he only saw her as an obligation, a charity project? In May, when Sophia was 2 months old, the House of Hope was ready to open. Alice stood in front of the restored townhouse, holding Sophia in a carrier, and Maximilian stood beside her. The building was beautiful, refreshed, but with its charm preserved. Above the entrance hung a new sign: "The House of Hope, the Sophia Foundation, shelter for women and children experiencing domestic violence." "Ready?" Maximilian asked. Alice took a deep breath. "Ready." They cut the ribbon together. Inside, the first group of women was already waiting. 5 women with 7 children, each with her own story of escape, trauma, and hope. Alice welcomed them personally, showed them their rooms, and assured them they were safe. "I was one of you," she told them at the first group meeting. "I know how you feel: fear, shame, the feeling that it's all your fault. But it is not your fault. It never was." The women cried. Some approached her later, hugging her, thanking her. Alice felt her heart break and swell at the same time. This was her purpose. This was why she survived. One evening in June, as Sophia slept in her room, Alice and Maximilian sat on her apartment balcony, drinking tea and watching the sunset. "I need to tell you something," Maximilian began, his voice different than usual, uncertain. Alice turned to him, feeling her heart race. "Over the past 8 months," he continued, "I've gotten to know you. I've seen your strength, your kindness, your heart. And somewhere along the way," he paused, searching for words, "somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you." Alice gasped. "I know it's complicated," Maximilian said quickly. "I know you've been through hell. I know you might not be ready, and I have no expectations. But I couldn't keep hiding how I feel. You deserve honesty." Alice felt tears well up in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. "I love you too," she whispered. "I thought I would never be able to trust a man again. But you showed me that there are still good men, that you can love without fear." Maximilian reached out, touching her cheek. May I kiss you?" The fact that he asked, that he didn't assume he had the right, made Alice love him even more. "Yes," she whispered. He leaned in and kissed her, gently, tenderly, without haste. It wasn't a kiss of lust, at least, not only that, it was a kiss of promise, respect, love. When they separated, Alice smiled through her tears. "I never thought this was possible," she said, "that I could be happy, truly happy." "You deserve happiness," Maximilian replied. You always deserved it. A year passed in blissful routine. Alice and Maximilian were together, but they didn't rush. First, friendship, then romance, then something deeper. Maximilian officially moved into her apartment, which he had practically lived in anyway. Sophia started calling him Daddy, her first word, which broke both of them. The House of Hope was now helping 20 women. Some stayed a month, some 6 months. All found the strength to start over. Alice worked there every day, leading support groups, helping women navigate the legal system, just being there. She now had a purpose greater than herself, and that healed her more than anything else. One day, news came from the prosecutor's office. Damien tried to appeal the verdict, arguing new evidence, but the court rejected the appeal. The sentence remained in effect. 6 years without the possibility of early release after what he did, the attempted knife assault. Alice felt relief, but also something else. Closure. I don't think about him every day anymore, she told her therapist. He used to be the center of my world. Now he is the past, and that is liberating. On the anniversary of their first meeting, that terrible night when she ran in the rain, Maximilian took Alice out to dinner. Sophia stayed with the nanny, Mrs. Johnson, who had come to love the girl like her own granddaughter. The restaurant was elegant, romantic, candles, soft music, a view of the Thames. After dessert, Maximilian pulled out a small velvet box. Alice gasped. "Alice Smith," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "A year ago I found you on the darkest path of your life. And you found me on the darkest path of mine. Together, we found the light." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, with a single diamond. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to raise Sophia together. I want to build the House of Hope together. I want to be your husband. Will you marry me?" Alice was openly crying now, not caring that people in the restaurant were staring. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He placed the ring on her finger, kissed her, and the whole restaurant applauded. The wedding took place 6 months later in the garden of Maximilian's villa. It was an intimate ceremony, only the closest friends and family. Mrs. Johnson was Alice's witness. Miss Bell came, smiling through her tears. The team of doctors and therapists who helped Alice regain her health. The women from the House of Hope who wanted to be there to see that a happy ending was possible. Alice wore a simple cream dress. Her hair was down, without makeup. She was herself, her true self, and it was beautiful. Maximilian waited at the altar, dressed in a grey suit. When he saw Alice walking toward him, his eyes filled with tears. There was no traditional giving away the bride. Alice walked alone because no one was giving her away. She chose, she decided. The vows were simple but profound. "I promise to love you in sickness and in health," Maximilian said, "to support you, respect you, never control you. I promise to be a partner, not an owner. I promise to trust you, even when fear tells me otherwise," Alice said. "I promise to build a life with you based on equality, respect, and love. I promise to be your wife, partner, and friend." When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Maximilian leaned in, kissing Alice gently, full of affection. Little Sophia, now a year old, was carried by Mrs. Johnson. The girl waved her hands, shouting, "Mommy, Daddy," and everyone laughed through their tears. 5 years later, Alice White, she adopted her husband's last name, which was her free choice, stood in the House of Hope, which had expanded to 2 buildings. It had already helped over 200 women and their children. Sophia was now 6 years old, attending school, intelligent, happy, and full of life. She didn't remember the dark days. For her, Mommy and Daddy were always together, always loving her. Alice also had a second son, 3-year-old Michael, named after Maximilian and Caroline's unborn son. He was a beautiful boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's gentle heart. One day, Alice received a letter. This time, it wasn't from Damien. He was still in prison, having received an additional 2 years for attacking a fellow inmate. But from Pauline, "Alice, I know I have no right to write to you. I know I was monstrous. I was complicit in what he did to you. I served a year in prison. It was enough for me to understand who I was. What a monster. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know, every time I hear about the House of Hope in the news, every time I read about another woman you saved, I feel hope. That maybe good can come even from the greatest evil. I live simply now. I work in a cafe. I live in a small apartment. I don't have much, but I have peace. I wish you happiness. You, Maximilian, your children, you deserve all the best." Pauline Alice read the letter twice. A part of her still felt anger, but a larger part felt pity, and something that might be the beginning of forgiveness. She would not reply. She didn't need to, but she would keep the letter as a reminder that people can change, even those who have hurt. Damien was released from prison after 8 years, additional time for violence in prison. He was a broken man. He had lost everything, his health, his job, his future. No one visited him during those 8 years. He tried to rebuild his life, but it was difficult. He had a criminal record. No one wanted to hire him. He lived in a cheap workers' hotel. One day, walking down the street, he saw a poster. The House of Hope, the Sophia Foundation, helping women start over. And beneath it, a photo. Alice, beautiful, radiant, holding 2 children, next to an elegant man. Damien stood, looking at the poster, and for the first time in his life, he felt something that might be remorse. She had won. She not only survived, she thrived. And him? He was nothing. He walked away, hunched, broken, and Alice never saw him again. Alice White was 38 years old. She sat in her garden, watching her children play. Sophia, now 16, smart and confident, teaching her younger brother Michael, 11, how to play chess. There was also the youngest 5-year-old Caroline, who ran between them, laughing. Maximilian sat beside her, his hair now completely grey, but his eyes still full of warmth. They held hands, watching their children. "Do you remember that night?" Alice asked quietly. "Every day," Maximilian replied. "The night I found you, the night my life found meaning." "You saved me," Alice said. "No," Maximilian corrected her, kissing her hand. "You saved yourself. I just offered you a hand." The House of Hope had now helped over 1,000 women. Alice had written a book about her story, which became a bestseller. The proceeds went to the foundation. She traveled the country, speaking at conferences, educating about domestic violence. She was no longer a victim. She was a survivor. She was a warrior. Sophia walked up to her. "Mom, when did you say we could go to the House of Hope? I want to help paint the room for the new children." Alice smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. Sophia didn't know everything. She knew her mom went through hard times, but the details had been spared. The time would come when she was older. "On the weekend, darling." As the sun set, casting a golden light on the garden, Alice closed her eyes and felt gratitude for the life she never dared to imagine, for the family she built, for the love she experienced every day. Hell was real, but so was heaven. And she, Alice White, once Smith, once a homeless woman bleeding on the pavement, was now proof that even from the darkest night you can step into the light, and that justice, true justice, always triumphs.